wanted to do a brief video here, similar to some I've done in the past, about ping, server hertz, general netcode, and what it actually amounts to, but this time in Apex Legends. Previously, that was in the Call of Duty games. So basically, easily the past 6 months, I have not really touched Call of Duty after years of playing it for a lot of reasons. Got back into Apex Legends, really enjoying playing it, primarily because I think that it's a much better game dynamic, like the actual rules, the gameplay, the setup, and the net effect of that, the net dynamics of the gameplay. And basically, it brings up, all of that brings up a really important issue, which is that since Apex launched, I have always felt that Apex has a much fairer netcode system. And without being complicated, basically, anytime you're playing an online shooting game, anything online over the internet, player to player, there is going to be a desync and a delay between the individual people and the servers. And so how the games handle that can vary extremely. And for me, in general, I'm on fiber internet and have very low ping to the game servers. And to be honest, that does not really seem to amount to much of anything. In fact, it seems to hurt in many situations far more than it helps. It basically comes down to, if everybody is on a very low ping and the servers are very good servers at a high hertz or tick rate, it's great. It's wonderful. You ideally want that super low ping. But if you don't have that, if you're the people that you're playing against or with have pings all over the place, if the server's low, these systems that are in place called lag compensation frequently penalize the person who has the low ping. And so it's been years of going through that. And for me, there's no question that Call of Duty has a very biased netcode. And I'll say something about that here in a second, what I mean by that. I'm trying to keep it simple. But basically, I have to keep moving around here so that the server doesn't kick me. I've set something up here as a demonstration. So what's basically happened is that, keeping that in mind, that my experience is that the netcode is more balanced on Apex Legends. At the same time, the only major tests that were ever done on Apex showed that it was one of the most laggy or delayed of any of the major shooters. And the question is, well, then why would it be doing that? If it's really much more delayed than, say, Fortnite or a Call of Duty multiplayer, why would it come off to play more fairly on a low ping? By low ping, typically for me, since back in 2016, Electronic Arts has had the absolute speediest, highest quality servers. Now, there's a lot going on with Battlefield 24-2 now, whatever to all that, but with Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5, I would get pings to their servers as low as 4 milliseconds, similar to Microsoft, like the core Microsoft framework. But in EA, actually, to the Battlefield game servers, would be as low as 4 or 5 milliseconds, and you just normally aren't going to get anything better than that, given fiber optic technology. Call of Duty, I do not get that. I'll get like a 30 millisecond ping. Apex Legends right now has me listed to a data center in Virginia, I think at around 20 milliseconds ping, which is typically better than the Call of Duty ones. So that's what I mean by low ping. I just saw an article come out from the Halo developers where people have been complaining about desync and getting shot around corners, unfair gunfights, going to melee people and it not registering, or spontaneously having it register from other people, or a bunch of weird stuff. And to keep it simple, again, what that came back to was the developers responded that Halo is in favor of the shooter. And so basically, I've already covered this just to the point of absurdity in several other streams that I exported to videos. Here's what that shooter's advantage, or favoring the shooter, means. If I am on my screen, it doesn't matter really who is the laggy player, but if I'm on my screen in one position and the other person, for whatever reason, sees me in an earlier position, I was here, I've run here, their system has still displayed me at this previous location. In a purely, completely biased shooter's advantage, when they see me here, which is no longer where I'm standing, and shoot, they get a hit. The idea with shooter's advantage is that the way to look at it is, what would they do if they don't do shooter's advantage? If you do not give the hit to a person who is point on hitting someone, it's frustrating. And that is bad for the player morale, it's bad for the sales, all sorts of reasons. The sales might get murky realistically, because now you have all these gun packs, and if you aren't hitting well, you buy something and it improves your accuracy. But realistically speaking, it's frustrating anytime you're aiming at a target to not be able to hit it. But at the same time, if it's delay that's causing it, it's very frustrating to the other person. So what do you do? And what people don't realize, I talked to a Call of Duty developer who pointed me to their some interviews. I think it was like a 2-hour interview with some of their core people from Treyarch. And they basically, and people had said for years that this was not happening or not true. They said, we use split ping tables. Well, what does a split ping table mean? What that amounted to was that they were not doing pure shooter's advantage. The servers were keeping tables for all of the players that show their individual ping. And this brings up issues of how often is it updated, is it accurate, whatever. And that then they were adjusting the game, or have been adjusting games, to balance that as a split between the people. Meaning that if we have unbalanced pings, I'm on 20 seconds, the other person is on 90. They would take a difference between those at 70 and do some sort of split and essentially bias the interaction. And the net effect of that, and this is directly from the Treyarch dev in the interview, is that a lot of what people thought was failing hit registration when they were pointing at someone and shooting head on, it was not failing hit registration. If it had been a pure shooter's advantage, completely biased netcode, the shot would have hit. What they were in fact doing is splitting the ping, and even though the person was on their screen here, they were not awarding it because the enemy was actually further away, and they would split the difference so that depending on where you were aiming, you would get a hit. And there are different ways of doing this, and some of the big YouTube people talked to the developers at special events, and they said, we have several different versions of netcode. This was specifically for Call of Duty, but all of the shooters are doing it. They said, we have different versions of the netcode that are biased one way or the other to the passive receiving end or the shooting aggressing end. But to my knowledge, the majority of them go shooter's advantage due to the frustration factor. So anyway, the Halo article basically said, we favor the shooter. And although I do not know what the exact system is on Apex, they have repeatedly said that they've attempted to balance it, to be balanced between the people, between the high and low pings, and it definitely seems to have worked, and it definitely seems to do it. And so again, trying to keep it as simple as possible. What does any of that amount to? You hear numbers, you see stats, but what does that realistically mean? And the bottom line is there is a pronounced, profound, blatant effect to these things that is not just some math on a sheet. It really has an effect, and people are really constantly experiencing it. And what I want to point out here is that in the older days with shooters, it was far more cut and dry. What has happened is that with more advanced processing servers and different rendering techniques, it's now smoothed out and masked, and it's very elastic, and that conceals it. And so, to be blunt, you never really know what is happening in gunfights for a standard person over the internet in reality, because it is so masked between these extremes. So getting to it here, this is the easiest demonstration that I can possibly do. The numbers I'm going to quote in here, I have the season 11 time to kill numbers, which some of those have been adjusted now for season 12. They're from a fairly reliable source, which I'll link in the YouTube links below this. The netcode testing that I have is from the guy who's considered to be the world's #1 authority on it, although I don't think he's doing it anymore. I think he has stopped doing the testing. It's battle nonsense. And the tests were originally done on Apex about 2 years ago. There was a first series of tests. They wanted to go back and see a few months later if it had changed, improved. And to be honest, the only major changes had to do with the client to server update rate, and that there are comments from the Apex developers in the comments there that was something that they did not really want to keep, and had put it back to the original values. So none of that really matters. Basically, the later test, there was next to no improvement. It was basically about the same. And so I'm going to go with that second set of tests from a couple years ago. Here's to the point. Get something that's useful here. What I've done here is I've set up markers based on the sprint speed, general sprint speed in Apex Legends. And so this is very similar to every shooter that I have tested. All of the major Call of Duties, Warzone, and this are basically 5 to 7 meters per second. And so if you go in here and you look, stand straight over this spot, and then ping to that furthest point.
Let's explore this way.
It's hard to get the exact. There you go, 7 meters. So this arc here is 7 meters, and with no gun, I'm gonna set up a timer here. If you look at his scanning timer, I'm gonna stand right over it. And as soon as it hits the second mark, I'm going to run down. That was 1 second, 7 meters. When you have the pistol, it goes down to about 6-ish. When you have some heavier guns, it gets closer to 5. But what that means is that this, in a standstill to sprint, is 1 second's distance. 7 meters is roughly 23-ish feet. 100 meters is almost equivalent to 100 yards, which is a football field. So if you go and you see something that says 50 meters, that's about half a football field. The next thing being here, that when you see these numbers and stats in netcode, they are quoted in milliseconds. A millisecond is 1,000th of a second. That means 1 second is 500 milliseconds. So if you run from this point to this point in 1 second, that's a 1,000 millisecond window. That places this midway point at 500 milliseconds. It places this quarter point at 250 milliseconds. And I've got to take a break for just 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, so the point here is that when Chris, or Battle Nonsense, has done his testing over the years, and this started back with Battlefield, he was experiencing these just absurd gunfights that you knew were BS. The person did not appear to be shooting. They shot, and even though when you were firing the same gun, it took forever to kill somebody, it was like it just blasted you all at once. And so there are these terms that are now fairly commonly known called damage spikes or super bullets. And so basically all of that is the game splicing different players' game states together because they have different experiences based on their connection and ping and the servers. So when they did this, when Chris did this testing, it basically he has found there were 3 major components to a gunfight that were constantly on different delays. One of them was the actual positioning of the person. So where I am, I move, how it displays to the other person was one amount of delay. If I began firing my gun, there was a different amount of delay across multiple shooting games versus the positioning. And the damage that would actually register when the damage was coming in or hitting on your screen were also different rates. So the delays were not consistent across different things. And in fact, I did a frame-by-frame breakdown of several different streamers in the same gunfight. And it turned out that in Warzone, amazingly, it was just right on point frame to frame between these people. How that they were on a good enough connection to do it, I don't know. But one of the critical things in their gunfight was that one player was jumping and turning, and when he turned, he aimed specifically at a person coming around a corner. On their screen, the character model did not even begin to turn until they had basically already landed, when in fact, in jumping, he had turned and was aiming at him immediately. And so the guy who was over at this point shooting at him thought that he had time to aim, shoot, and deal with the situation because the other guy's character model had not turned. The amazing thing was that the other guy's character model was almost frame for frame accurate in positioning, but the turning that had begun up here did not even happen until he had, I think, completely landed. So that was a whole different component of rotation that for some reason in Warzone was severely delayed and really had an effect. But you know, it's over the internet and stuff's going to happen. But basically the 3 common things were the actual position, the animation of gun firing, and the damage output or received. 3 major categories. And the thing is that consistently the damage has landed more quickly than the actual animation of the person firing, including an apex. And so that means that you see an enemy show up around a corner, they don't appear to be shooting. You begin firing, and all of a sudden, bam, you're knocked back dead. Uh, that is because the gunfire animations themselves, the muzzle flash, are more delayed than the actual damage. And that actually is a big deal, and it does that in Call of Duty too. Their positioning then also is delayed, because when you see them, and this is the other component, the third one of those, is that when you see them round that corner, they are in fact already over here on their screen shooting at you. So you are aiming at a person who is no longer in reality there. You are seeing an animation that is more delayed than the gunfire, and then you're getting a blast. And the bottom line is, this happens all the time in these games. And it matters because that's exactly the kind of thing you're doing in the shooter, is waiting to see someone, sizing it up, trying to be in cover, and here they come, and it's doing all of those things constantly. But again, this is not in any way to pick on Apex. It's to, I wish I could turn this music down. See if I can get these way too loud. Got to turn that down. All right, so again, this is something that's going to happen constantly. So back to these amounts. This is the 250 millisecond mark. I'm going to pull the numbers up. And so the first thing I'm going to look at is the positioning. These tests were done for, and here's the bottom line here. This first part is going to be based on exactly equivalent pings to the server for 2 players, with Apex running on between 20 and 30 hertz. They have a they've officially stated that Apex runs on 20 hertz, but when it was tested, there's some murkiness because the updates took more than one packet to send, and so it was sending it where it made it look like it was a higher hertz server. And so when Battle Nonsense tested, it looked like the servers were sometimes running up closer to 30 hertz. But regardless, 20 to 30 hertz. And his tests were done on each person having a 24 millisecond ping to the server. Right now, I'm listed at about 20 on Fiber. So assuming, and that is a good ping, assuming the servers are running at their optimal 20 to 30 hertz level, assuming that both people are on a minimal ping, me on Fiber, that's about what I'm at, 24 milliseconds. The delay from one person to another on the positioning had an average of close to 170 milliseconds and a maximum of close to let's see. The movement, the delay on the movement was an average of 140 milliseconds and a maximum of close to 160. So what's 140 milliseconds in this window? That would be a 125 right there. 140 would be right about here. So in other words, sum this up, make it as simple as possible. The entire arc here is a 1000 millisecond. This quarter is 250. The average positional delay between 2 people on optimal pings on these 20 to 30 hertz servers was 140 milliseconds. Meaning that if I am here and move here, that window there is the standard minimal delay and inaccuracy between people. So I'm behind a door over here, or I actually not use the door. I on my screen see someone standing, running. I shoot at them right here. They are actually on the most minimal delay already right about here. The problem with this is that that is on optimal. If I go through and look in my the servers, you're going to see a whole array between the locations of their servers and my ping to the server, and none of that tells you the other people's ping that are not on fiber internet or are in a congested area or anything else. So this basically sets up a minimal desync window of this much space, meaning that if I go to punch them and I see them here and hit them, they have easily just moved over to the side completely. When you go into the knockout ring and you go to hit someone, there is every chance they've already moved over here. And so some of those like knockout fights are just absurd. You can tell that it's going wonky in the middle of the fights. Again, this is not to knock Apex, because I've already went through a whole series of Call of Duty videos about this. So that's the positional. You know, again, if you look at that window, if there was a door here and I'm standing here and they're shooting at me, I'm already behind the door, they're still going to be hitting me over here. And the video I'll link that Battle Nonsense tested clearly demonstrates this. The problem with his video is that he, in some of the tests, puts it on such an extreme differential between the connections that while you can see it and it makes it obvious, I mean, there's one where the person is like here, they've already run this far, and they're still getting hit back over there. That is hard for people to relate to because it's an extreme difference, and the game is not normally doing that. He does that for demonstration purposes. But that's the whole point of my video, is that this is the minimal desync window, and it only gets worse from there. And that's already bad. So then that brings up, what about it? And I'm just going to keep on back burner. Your gunfire animations, okay, the movement is at average of 140 delay. The actual gunfire animations were worse than that. They were at close to 170 on average. Meaning that if I was on your screen right here, heading this way, and you were actually seeing it, and I began shooting right here, you wouldn't actually see the gun motion until the firing over until here. Again, this happens all the time. You are going to be, and I've been playing a lot of the control mode, and all the time the person is there, they don't appear to be doing anything. All of a sudden, boom, here come 5 bullets, and as they're registering, you finally see some gunfire. That's why, because there's that animation delay. And so then that gets down to the damage, because the damage has actually been prioritized over either of them. And so if the damage is on a substantially less delay, that produces this super bullet. Well, it's not exactly the super bullets, that's different, but it produces an effect of being blasted from nowhere. The average damage delay was less than 100 milliseconds. So you compare the damage at an average of 100 to the animation itself at 170 and the position at 140. You are nearly at a third less delay for the damage, and almost a half of the delay of the gunfire. So what that means is that when the players are desynced, they've already moved. Here's a door. They've moved outside of the door to right here and are shooting you. You aren't even seeing them yet. If the door is here and the window's here and you've moved over to here, they're shooting, firing, and the first thing that's hitting is the damage. So you're literally going to have someone appearing in a window on an optimal connection with a window like this. You're going to be having someone appear blasting you as if they've already been standing there with the gun not even appearing to be firing yet. Happens all the time. I have a whole library of videos. I export the good stuff up to YouTube for fun. Uh, but you can see this happening constantly. And as soon as you get into this thing where people are strafing over a window like this, there are also then I've mentioned this before, the guys who kind of wrote the book on this stuff from Valve and Steam with CSGO know about all these bizarre things that happen that are called, it's basically like a form of snaking and rubber banding, where the person can become almost impossible to hit between the extremes as the frames are rendering. So even though you could potentially try to track them with your shooter's advantage, it actually in the rendering process becomes nearly impossible to hit, which just basically means that the snaking and the strafing can become the most infuriatingly stupid thing you've ever seen, especially if you're trying to do punching in the boxing ring. The reason that stuff is or isn't hitting and that it's getting all wonky is because of these bizarre interpolations and stuff between the desync. So anyway, again, the point here is that that's on mutual 24 millisecond pings to a server running at an optimal 20 to 30 hertz. Normally speaking, if both players double, if the ping of both people went up to 40, 50, it gets almost twice as bad. As soon as both people are at 50, the window is going to double. So you're talking about a 50 millisecond, on these servers, a 50 millisecond ping producing a desync window this big. Typically speaking, and the reason that it is not this bad in Call of Duty or Battlefield is the server cycling. You would constantly in those games find people who each have a 50 millisecond ping. The window is not this bad because the servers on those multiplayer games will run at now 60 hertz, which is probably about 3 times the rate. When you get to 3 times the rate, it's not a one-to-one correspondence. Doubling the server rate does not normally cut the delay in half. It possibly does it at about like a 40% reduction or 60% of what it originally was. So you would see that on a 60 hertz server, this minimal delay would probably go down to just over half of that. And then when the people's pings went up to 50, it would double to something closer to here instead of all the way over here. But this 20 to 30 hertz rate is now common in Battle Royale games. And this is like now a big segue point. These Battle Royale games are commonly on this type of server rate. Warzone, this. If this is a standard minimal window that on a 50 millisecond ping for both people would go up to here, that is assuming both people have the same ping value. Now, this is basically on the what I'm going to say is on the positive side of Apex. What happens when I'm on this minimal window, but they are on twice that? The delay is going to fall somewhere in reality into that interstitial space there. It should not normally be the full double because I'm not at the double, they are. It's going to be somewhere here in this window. And this is where the different lag compensations come into play. And as I said, the devs have already said from Call of Duty that they change it from year to year. And it also, what people don't know is that they're changing the way that they change it. Uh, if you simply mute one person's values to a certain time limit, that's one thing. But what they've apparently started doing these, and I think it's blatantly obvious in Warzone, they are literally buffering your movement and rendering state to slow you down. I will go into gunfights constantly. I've just stopped playing Warzone. It's miserable. I will go into gunfights and everything goes into slow motion. The reason it's going into slow motion is because they are buffering me and slowing me down. And that's not the only way to do a split ping. The other thing that comes up with this is that if you say, well, I'm at 20 ping and they're at 50, so the window is going to fall somewhere in between here. Pings are not constant. they and they are not symmetric. Your ping, your round trip ping from you to the server and back has a cumulative value, but that does not mean the up and down pings by the two ping directions were equivalent. It may have been for a person on a 50 ping, it may have been 35 to the server and 15 back, and it may change over time. So all of that comes into play. It has been way on back in 2013. Oven Baked Muffin, who was doing YouTube videos and played Call of Duty constantly, did tests which showed that if the ping was asymmetric like that, up and down, you constantly lost hit registration, because it was estimating on a split that was inaccurate because the two directions were different. So this can get amazingly messed up amazingly quickly. And again, this is the point for me on Apex. They are clearly doing something, in my opinion, that is balancing it much more fairly between the differences. It does get very laggy and rubber bandy at times, but the net effect is that the gunfights are feel much more fair. So, gonna do one last kind of technical thing here, which is, what do these damage values actually mean? If your minimal desync on damage is an average of 100 milliseconds, even on an optimal connection for both people, about 24 milliseconds ping, optimal server state, still a minimal damage desync of 100 milliseconds. What does that mean? Now, I can tell you blatantly, in a game like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019, guns could kill in less than 100 milliseconds routinely. In fact, most of the guns, I don't remember the exact things, killed in, I think, around 150 milliseconds. If you had that delay with that time to kill, every gunfight is basically arbitrary. It's just whoever sees the other person first on the screen and shoots. And that's all based on positional desync. So it's total bullshit. Apex has a much higher time to kill, and the time to kill varies based on how much armor you have. So, pulling the numbers up here. These, some of these are going to have changed with Season 12, but in general, this whole picture is there. There's no reason to be obsessing over details. On your assault rifles, Havoc, R301, Flatline, Hemlock. Headshots, of course, do more damage and kill more quickly. Going to exclude those just for simplicity. Your body shot time to kill on your assault rifles ranges from about 960 mil. Oh, I've got to tell what the armor was. Okay. Uh, I better not use that one because that's the 200 health. I'm going to quote this in the standard battle royale mode. You start with white armor, which gives you 50 bonus armor points over your 100 health, which is effectively 150 points. Then you go blue to purple. Purple gives you 200. So you start, no armor is 100 health points. White armor gives you 2 blocks, which is 50. Blue gives you 3, is 75 for a total of 175. Purple gives you 4, 100 extra points and 4 blocks of armor for a total of 200, including your base health. But since the standard Battle Royale mode has white armor as a default, you basically start with the equivalent of 150 health, 100 base health and 50 armor. And so if you go in to your the R301 on a 150 health, your time to kill is right at about 750 milliseconds. So realistically speaking, if this was a 500, if this is 500 millisecond window, and someone's running, this would be the 750 millisecond window. That means that if you saw the person running from here to here with a fully loaded R301, and they have white armor with 150 health, and you hit every single shot going to here, that's how long it would take to kill them. If the damage is on 100 milliseconds delay, the problem with this is depending on who shoots first, on even a minimal window, you are going to have a desync of nearly 1/7 of the bullets. It's about 14 shots to kill to get that damage. So any gunfight, there is a base inaccuracy on an R301 of right at 2 bullets. Meaning that if they come around a corner and their position is updating to you and they're already firing, you're having that positional delay, the animation delay, and a damage delay. Both directions. That is at least an artificial, roughly 2-shot penalty. That means that if your pings double up to that 50 milliseconds, you're going up to a 4-bullet desync. And that can penalize really any direction of it because of the lag compensation that they choose to use. The only thing that you can, in any of these shooter games, the only thing that you can know at that point is any way you look at it, it is going to be out of sync by at least about 2 bullets. It is commonly going to go up to 4 bullets. So you're talking about 100 of 750 desync or 200 easily of 750 desync. If you are in what appears to be a head-to-head gunfight and you're shooting, you are very easily losing 2 to 4 bullets regardless of how much you're shooting, depending on whose side of the desync you're on. Or both people. Both people may be standing there shooting from 2 different positions as they're strafing, and they're losing 2 to 4 bullets. They're just basically evaporating. this happens all the time. And it also occurs in the opposite direction as a damage spike or a super bullet, where because they were shooting before it was registering on your screen, you receive all of it and are essentially getting pounded with, instead of 2 bullets, 4 bullets, instead of 4 bullets, 8 bullets. So this is a just constant occurrence. And my real point in this is this. There are 2 solutions. Well, actually, there are really 3 solutions. Prior to this advent of battle royales, all of the competitive shooter people knew that you had to be on a LAN. Because even on a local area network with an optimal connection, there was still delay, and it was still substantial enough to matter, much less over the World Wide Web. Now with these battle royales having 100 to 200 people and played over the public internet, it's so much worse. And until they actually organize LAN tournaments, it's going to be inaccurate. And it's going to be, at a minimum, the inaccuracies that I was just discussing here. This is why the people in the Halo tournaments were getting in trouble for using these the geo filters. Well, the only sane thing to do would be to use a geo filter, because what the geo filter does is it blocks anybody with a connection that's too high of a ping, or I mean, that's the common use of it. That keeps you all in that small radius, so that you don't have that much desync between the people, and that the desync is more balanced. So if you can't do it on a LAN, the next thing is to up the server rates. Well, on the negative side for Apex, they released a couple articles, I think last year, basically attempting to water down and act like it wasn't that bad, when in fact it is. And the game that sets the bar for it is Valorant. 128 hertz servers on fiber internet. I think you can get a 10 millisecond ping to their servers. When you get the servers up to 128 hertz on a fiber optic ping, as low as 10 milliseconds, your windows get like this. There is nearly no window whatsoever, even over the public internet. At the most, you might get something like this. I did a video on it recently. So, yes, the higher hertz servers are that big of a difference. When they have the servers on 128 hertz, a 10 millisecond ping basically exists as 10 milliseconds. If you look at this, 5, 250, 125, 62.5, roughly 30, that 10 millisecond window on fiber internet, 128 hertz, there basically is no delay. That doesn't mean everybody's going to have that. There may be outside packet loss or whatever, but it is completely feasible in an online shooter over the public World Wide Web, given fiber optic internet connection rates. If everyone was on fiber, that if those servers are at that high of a rate at 128 hertz, it becomes virtually non-existent. So it is possible, even given today's technology, and Valorant can do it. 128 hertz is over 6 times. So this window right here is at a server rate running 6 times the rate of an Apex server. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There you go. They aren't going to do that, and Call of Duty is not doing that either. They're running it at somewhere around 20 to 30 for Warzone. So what can you do if you don't do that? And here's the point, and this is why Apex, the net effect of Apex, has actually been very enjoyable despite the lag and stuff. It's the third solution to all of that is to raise the TTK. And that's why when you have the none of the guns in Apex are really that different. All of your TTKs run from maybe at that 150 health, they run from about a minimum of 700 milliseconds up to a maximum of about 150-ish, with most of them falling between about like 950 and 125. Uh, so yeah, there are differences and they're subtle, but the reality, given the netcode, is that they're oh, I'm sorry, I said 125. I messed up there in the numbers, so I was correct. 700. You're talking about if they're at 660 milliseconds up to about 1500 milliseconds. I was looking at their sheet, which has it broken down as actual seconds, like 1.3 or whatever. Um, so your R301 at 150 health has a time to kill of just at 750 milliseconds. And so most of your guns in Apex are going to range from at a minimum about 650 milliseconds up to a maximum of maybe 1500 milliseconds. But that's important. So I wish I hadn't misstated that. The reason that's important is that when you're talking about 150 health going up to as high as 1500 milliseconds of 1500 milliseconds time to kill, that's compared to Modern Warfare 2019 having guns at as low as a 15th of that. So what's happening, this is my point with Apex here, I'll get down here, is that when you get the time to kill that high, it gives room to breathe. And so the thing with Apex here is that even though you're going to have that minimal desync, even though you're going to have those delays, even though you're going to have that damage desync, the damage spikes, all of these things happening, even on the minimal connection, because it is enmeshed within a much longer time to kill, it gives you room to breathe. And here is the real point, and I'm just going to end the video on this. The real point is that when you have the super low TTKs, and you have Warzone has changed them around, but when you have the low TTKs in Warzone, number one, it makes people afraid to engage in gunfights. Number two, it means that if someone hides out and gets shots on you, they can kill you nearly immediately. And due to all of these different desyncs and positions and stuff, it basically makes it potentially makes it nothing but super campy. People afraid to fight, people afraid to move, hiding out, peeking constantly, and when they are peeking, being rewarded for it in a peekers first type of environment. Meaning that all you have to do is slip in a couple shots and you're done. When you have Apex, especially with the higher tier armor, or Treyarch's recent Call of Duty games, where it has a much higher TTK, when these desyncs happen, you can take a bullet and live. When you're sitting there hiding and you get a shot in and someone can tell where you're coming from, you don't just immediately win. That then gives you room to do advanced movement. It gives you room to do something that's not hiding in a window. I just hate Warzone. I hate Verdansk. I don't even want to touch the new one. I think it's complete junk. Playing Warzone was just one big rat fest. And, it's just, I cannot say enough. If you cannot run a first-person shooter on a high enough tick rate with a low enough ping to support gameplay on the TTK that you have. You need to up the TTK, and that's what Apex has done. Apex has a TTK that is adequate. When you're getting up to 1,000 milliseconds to 1,500 milliseconds, anywhere between 750 milliseconds to 1,000 milliseconds. That means that, again, I'll do the window here. This is pretty much it. Okay, if this is a 1,000 millisecond window, the R301 at 150 health has a 750 millisecond TTK. That means if I hit every single shot on a running opponent, say there's a door here. The enemy comes out of the door, I see them. Keeping in mind all those stupid desyncs and stuff on my screen, I see them here. In order to kill them, it is going to take 750 milliseconds of them running, and I have to hit every bullet across this window. Since the desync was about roughly altogether about 120 milliseconds, that means that in there's a window about like that. The desyncs were ranging from damage to position from right at about 100 milliseconds up to I think like 180. So I'll just average it out and say it was about 150. So 750 millisecond window to kill someone, hitting every bullet, and your actual desync is only about that. That means that in this window of time with them running, they're only going to lose at a minimal delay about this much of being robbed. Or me, vice versa. That's not that bad. When you have Modern Warfare 2019 that has a 100 millisecond window, that's right there. Anything that happens while they're running there is critical. You're just getting robbed constantly. So putting the armor, raising the TTK up to this, or even out to there on a magazine of bullets gives you room to breathe. It gives them time to reposition, jump shot, slide, get out of gunfire, have a teammate cover for them. Everything that you can possibly imagine, especially with duos and trios and squads. It gives room to breathe in the fights given all the delays. So again, I'll just pick another gun here real quick. 1,000 millisecond sprinting window right there. What's a gun that would be good to look at? The Volt. The Volt at 150 health has about a close to 2/3 of a second time to kill, close to 666 milliseconds. It's listed here as 620. So what is 620 milliseconds in this window? A person, pretend there's a rock here. I see the enemy appear here. They're running over to here. 660 milliseconds should be right in here. And this is with them at 150 health. 500, 750, about 660. So in order for me to kill them, I have to see them immediately, begin shooting right here, and hit every single shot up to right here. If they have higher armor, it's going to go up over into here. Purple armor, it's going to go up into here. And I'm having to hit every single shot. So there's the base 660 window. If my delays altogether averaged out were around 150 millisecond for the different components, that was like right in here. So on this window, from here to here, the only thing that either person is going to get robbed on an ideal 24 millisecond ping is about this much space and gunfire. It smooths it out. So, to wrap it all up, if you can't play on a LAN, If you're going to cheap out on servers, if the system can't handle the high servers, if you can't do 128 hertz servers, you need to at least raise the TTK up. And they did. It plays much better. The problem again with this is that all of these windows were on a mutual 24 millisecond delay, which people aren't going to have. Again, when they're balancing the netcode, it's clear to me that Apex has done something to balance the two different ends so that it's not biased completely towards the shooter. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Hope everybody has a great day.